This is MSI's GP75 Leopard 9SF gaming laptop. And I've checked out laptops in the past, and there's always usually like a hit or miss, and there's things that I like about the laptops, and then there's things I don't like. This unit right here has impressed me to the point where I think it is literally the best laptop that I've seen to date. And it's got to do with all the specs inside, the performance, the numbers coming out. But there are a few little critiquing points, and we will get onto them later. Now, firstly, we'll roll through with the monitor, which they say on the box is a 17.3-inch IPS-like 144Hz display. Now, MSI can't officially use the term IPS because they're using a panel from a different panel manufacturer who have patented the word IPS. So that's the reason why they can't officially use that. But in terms of its viewing angles, it's phenomenal from all fronts. And then we look at the response times, and going into CSGO, this tells me all the numbers I need to know. We've got a response time of around 3 to 5 milliseconds with an average of 4 milliseconds, which is phenomenal for the fact that it's not only an IPS display, but it's also 144 Hz on a laptop. And then we look at the input lag. The total input lag numbers I got here was from 15 to 26 milliseconds with an average of 19.33 milliseconds. So if you're into gaming on the fly, then this laptop definitely has the gear to give you a competitive edge and give you the best look while you're gaming at 144 Hz. Now, speaking of the color balance, it does have a bluish tinge to it, so if you want to do video editing, then I would suggest recalibrating the colors on this monitor. Now, for the screen itself, I measured a max of around 294 nits of brightness, which is perfectly fine, and if you want to go for a sweet spot of around 160, then dropping the brightness to around half will do that. It's also got a matte coating on the screen to block out reflections, and there's no visible cross-hatching. So the monitor's viewing angles, response time, and input lag is phenomenal. Moving on now to the specs inside, we've got an i7-9750H, which is a 6-core, 12-threaded processor. It boosts all the way up to 4.5 GHz on the single core, but in gaming you can expect it to drop to around 4 GHz, and then if you're stressing all cores and threads on a stress test, it will drop down to around 3.5 GHz. Testing this out in IDA64 did show some interesting numbers where initially the CPU will throttle until the fans kick in, or of course if you've got the fans on full speed, it'll do a fine job. It'll keep the CPU under 90 degrees, and this is in a 25C ambient environment, but keep in mind this is a laptop and it is showing some really good numbers where you've got a Cinebench R20 score of 2,725 and a single core score of 437, and couple that with the fact that it's got a desktop RTX 2070 inside, but they have underclocked it, it does give you some very impressive gaming numbers. We'll pull up the numbers right here for you where I tested out a couple of games and timed by extreme. It's coming close to a 5700 and sitting right around that of an RTX 2060. But here's the good part, it does all this whilst only juicing 185 watts roughly while you're playing games, and this is with the monitor on full brightness. Idle wattage will see this laptop drop to around 45 watts, and then if you switch it to the battery life, you've got about an hour and 20 minutes of watching YouTube videos and gaming, where your gaming performance will drop down by roughly 1/4 to what it's like with the power brick plugged in. So you can do some light gaming on the fly, but you will definitely want to plug in the AC adapter to get the full performance out of this laptop, where it weighs in at roughly 2.55 kilograms, and then the brick itself weighs in just a little over 800 grams. So you've got a full package with cables of around 3.5 kilograms. Now moving through the cooling solution, we've got 7 heat pipes and 2 70mm fans on both sides, and it does a really good job of cooling this laptop down, and whilst you're gaming, the noises will get a little bit high pitched. I'll let you guys have a listen. But overall, when I did put the thermal imaging camera on this laptop, I was quite impressed with the temperatures. We're looking around 42 degrees on top. If you're going to type, it will be a good hand warmer. And then on the bottom, we've got around 52 degrees max. So the ventilation and the fans used on this implementation are, again, just like the monitor, phenomenal, where you've got 4 vents, 2 on each side and then 2 on the rear. And then on the bottom of the case, you've also got some slight ventilation, and you can take this off to reveal what's underneath, where you've got the option to add an additional M.2 PCIe NVMe, where it's already got a 1TB Samsung solution installed, which have sequential read and write speeds that go to 1GB and over 2GB respectively per second, and then random read and writes on the 4K are very impressive too, going near 60 megabytes per second on the read sides and then 100 megabytes per second on the write sides. So this Samsung TLC based solution is another win for MSI. Now speaking of memory, you got two SODIMM slots there, and they are populated with two 8GB sticks. Though if it's one thing to critique about the bottom side of the laptop, it would be to have an ease of access for just upgrading the SSD or the RAM, as opposed to normally here you have to take off every single screw underneath to get this bottom bracket off. And on that bracket, I would like to see a little bit more ventilation in the future. The one thing you may have noticed from looking at the underside of this laptop is the two speakers on the left and right hand sides. MSI are calling these giant speakers. I'm calling these really good speakers for a laptop. I was quite surprised by not just the loudness of these speakers, but the clarity too. When I was watching a recap of Gotham before I fell asleep and I didn't realize what had happened in the last couple of episodes, it just gave me a good recap. I could really hear clearly what Bruce Wayne did to poor old Alfred. But continuing on with audio numbers, is as if MSI have listened to my previous laptop reviews, where the onboard audio here is quite simply phenomenal, especially for a laptop solution. We've got crosstalk levels that are going under 90 decibels, and the good thing is here, if you max the volume level out, it will still not have any crosstalk leakage, and it'll still stay below 90 decibels, which is some of the best numbers I've seen, even on desktop and dedicated audio solutions. Moving through the frequency response curve, this one was really interesting, because out of the box, or at least with this lone sample that I got here, the frequency response curve, quite simply to put it, was whack out of the box. Where we've got bass levels, where we usually have bass roll off, this had bass roll on, where it was like plus 11 dB. But I quickly rectified this by switching off all the audio effects, where you've got this software called Nahimic Audio, where you can change things around and set gain profiles too. But turning all this off revealed a very flat line for the frequency response curve. The channel balance was also good between the left and right channels. And one thing I did notice was once you took everything off, you got roughly a -5 decibel roll off from 10 Hertz and under. And then after that, you had basically a perfectly flat response curve. Though onto the mic input, this will be good if you want to play games with your friends and not have them listen to any noise, and they'll be able to hear your voice clearly, but it will distort your voice since they are using what I call heavy noise suppression. So basically this is good for games and good for chatting to people, but if you're doing any professional voice recordings, then I would suggest getting a dedicated solution. Then moving through the rest of the hardware on this laptop, we've got a touchpad with a left and right dedicated mouse button. I personally prefer this over the no button solutions. And then the keyboard itself is an implementation from SteelSeries, where you can control the RGB lighting individually for each key or choose from the many different patterns they have available. And I must say, to type on this thing, it was a really good experience. I like the implementation they've put on this laptop. You've also got a numpad there if you want to do calculations or accounting on the go. But one thing I will critique is that although the function key works really well, where you can change brightness, RGB control, and all that on the fly, I will say that I do prefer having the Windows key on the left-hand side of the keyboard, whereas on this keyboard, it's on the right-hand side. They've also included two macro buttons, where one of them will pretty much put the fans on full speed straight away, and then the other will change the RGB control of the keyboard on the fly. Going over the left-hand side of this laptop, we've got a USB Type-C and Type-A in, as well as a 3-pin mic in and headphone in ports. And then we've got a killer 1 gigabit Ethernet NIC solution, as well as a security lock device, HDMI 2.0 out, and mini display port out. Going over the right-hand side, we've got two USB Type-A's, an SD card reader, and your AC power in. Speaking of the USB 3 speeds, as well as the NIC, and also the Wi-Fi 6 speeds on this laptop, they all checked out absolutely fine. And the last thing, of course, they've included a 720p webcam, as well as an onboard mic, so you don't need an external mic to talk to people on the fly. And so now all this leads us to conclusion time on the GP75 Leopard 9SF from MSI. And I gotta say, everything here checked out. We've got the single power brick. It's very convenient to lug around. It's not too heavy. You've got an RTX 2070 inside, albeit it is clocked a bit lower than the desktop variant. And you've also got a 6-core 12-threaded CPU that does a really good job of playing games. And of course, the input lag and the screen that they've implemented is phenomenal, as well as that onboard audio, and the temperatures check out, and the noise levels aren't too bad. So I gotta say, I really like what they've done with this laptop. Everything has passed the tests here around Tech Yes City. Though one thing, of course, is we've got to talk about this, is the price. Currently, this is really, I think it's only sold at JB Hi-Fi in Australia for 3,400 Aussie dollars, or in the US, the cheapest I could find it for was 2,000 USD. And that's for what they call the Raider model. I don't know if the Leopard's being released into the wild, but the Raider looked like it had pretty much the same specs. So I'm not too sure what's going on with the naming there, but this laptop, the one I've got here in the studio, is a really good gaming laptop. Though whether it is good for the money is up to you. I'm personally a desktop kind of guy where I prefer, even when I'm traveling, lugging around a mini RTX suitcase-like PC and then plugging that up to wherever I'm staying to a monitor with a dedicated keyboard and mouse. This here, however, is an all-in-one package that would do a great job. But we'll ask you, what about the critiquing points with this laptop? Surely it's not perfect. And I gotta say, the only couple of things I could critique would be the Windows key, having that on the left-hand side. I do prefer that. But of course, if that bothers you like it does bother me, you could easily go into the software and change that to be your Windows key. So that's not really a bad point. And I'd say in 2019, the other critiquing point, I'd like to see this gray, I kind of call it old man gray. I'd like to see that changed for maybe an all black design, or I'd like to see MSI go with some sort of outlandish designs, maybe make it a white and black design. For instance, we look at that studio wall there, it's 2019, it's yellow, it's just popping in the background. I want to see some popping colors on this laptop. And I know for a fact if that background there was gray, some people would be saying in the comments, dude, that wall is so 1990s, I'm unsubbing. And that's right, people would unsub because of the wall color in my studio. But before we get on out of here, we got the question of the day, which comes from ClicksBX, and he asks, is this a good starter PC? And he's referring to the previous video I did where we're using an i7-2600 RX 470. And for the money, if you guys are on a budget, you know as well as I do that used PCs will always give you a great experience for the dollar, and they'll be great starter PCs. If you want to spend your money on something higher end, or even something like this laptop here on the desk, I'd say these are more acquired tastes, where you definitely know that you're a gaming enthusiast on PC and money isn't so much an object as opposed to getting a really good experience. So yes, it will be a great starter PC. And with that aside, I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.